There are events in our lives that can shape us forever. It is our responsibility to use those events to educate and evaluate. Stephanie Ford is going to do a speech tonight titled Eyes Wide Open. Ladies and gentlemen, Toastmasters, Stephanie Ford.
Good evening. The person that we are today is an aggregate of the events that have happened to us throughout our lives. I grew up in the inner city of Cleveland, Ohio, in a neighborhood, in a community where everybody looked like me. Where I went to church, where I went to school, everybody looks like me. So I didn't experience racism firsthand in that protected environment. Not to say that I didn't know about it. My parents both grew up in the South, where they had their own stories of how they navigated their lives because of their skin color. In elementary school, I remember being taught about slavery, about racism, about protests, about Dr. King, and it was history. It hadn't touched me. I had always been a good student, and in my 9th grade year, I was introduced to a program called ABC, A Better Chance. And it's a program that provides scholarships to high school students to go to private schools. And these are some of the top schools in the country. In fact, one of my classmates actually received a scholarship to go to St. Andrew's School, a boarding school in Delaware. I was able to receive a scholarship to go to a private girls' school in Shaker Heights, Ohio, Laurel School. This was the first time that I did not see people that looked just like me. In fact, I was hard-pressed to find another girl of color. It was a brand new environment, and I went from being in a protected community where everyone looked like me to where no one looked like me. And this is where my protective shell was cracked. The first time that I was called the N-word was while I was walking to school after getting off the train. According to the people in the car that I was in, that they were in, and yelled obscenities at me, I wasn't supposed to be in that neighborhood. But at that point, it still didn't hit me because I didn't know those people. They didn't know me. They didn't know what my potential was. So I continued. The next time I heard the N-word, I was walking into my classroom, my homeroom, and it just so happened that the person that was speaking had her back to me. And I heard the N-word come out of her mouth. And no one corrected her. No one said anything. I was devastated then because those people knew me. And I saw them. I saw them for what they were. I saw their parents. I saw their friends. And I saw how they looked at me. Fast forward to my very first job out of college. I went to Northwestern, graduated, worked my butt off to graduate, in fact, and was proud of that. And at one point, I had a conversation with a young man who was an NU grad student. He was doing an internship at the company that I was working for. We got into a conversation about affirmative action. And he politely asked me how I felt to take somebody's spot that may have deserved it more than I did. Now, the assumption was that I hadn't worked for that spot, the assumption was that I was less than another crack in the shell. Years later, at another job, a coworker and I decided to go to a shoe store during our lunch break. I was actually the one that was looking for the shoes, and she was just hanging out with me. Have to mention she was a Caucasian coworker. I'm looking at a shoe, I'm picking up a shoe, and as soon as we walk into the store, the salesperson rushes up to my coworker, even though I have a shoe in my hand. I had to chase down that salesperson to have her service me. And when I turned to my coworker, I said to her, "Did you see that?" And she said, "What?" And I was amazed that it was right in her face, and she couldn't recognize it. She didn't recognize it until I actually said something to her. And at that point, she was flabbergasted. She didn't understand how something like that happened, and she not even noticed it. So, the reason that I'm here is to let you know that it's still happening. It may have been years ago that those happened to me, but those are just some of the stories, not even all of them. I can tell you that when I was married, I had a stepson. And at a certain age, as he became close to being a teenager, we had to have the conversation of, what do you do when a police officer stops you? And I had to wonder, is that a conversation that everyone has in their household? I don't think so. I don't think so. But I need to let you know that it's not just my responsibility to bring this to everyone's attention. It's also all of our responsibility that when we see something like that, we have to say something in order for anything to change. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We all have to speak. Thank you.